Welcome to Shattered Reality with your hosts Kate Valentine and Fahrusha. Prepare to have your paradigms shifted and your truths questioned. And now, Shattered Reality.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, Fahrusha. I guess it's time for another thrilling session here at Shattered Reality.
Yes, and we have been on a light summer schedule,
Yes.
but I'm hoping in September we go back to our regular schedule or something close to it.
Okay.
But we have such a fabulous guest today. I'm thrilled that she has agreed to come on board and be with us today. The person I'm talking about is Nancy Scooter McMoneagle, and she is the executive director and president of the Monroe Institute. Prior to that, she had an astrological practice that was international. She is really at the nexus of psychic and consciousness studies and research. Because, believe it or not, it's just she's in such a catbird seat there at the Monroe Institute. But not only that, her stepfather was the founder of the Monroe Institute, Mr. Robert Monroe himself. And her husband is Joe McMoneagle, remote viewer number 0001.
I guess that definitely is extremely impressive.
Yeah, and she has been, the director and president of the Monroe Institute for two different terms. The first one was about, I'm going to say more than 20 years ago. Do I dare to say that?
Mm-hmm.
I just did. And she looks younger than springtime. She's a beautiful blonde with a gorgeous smile and one of the nicest people you ever want to meet. Hello, Scooter.
Oh, my goodness. What a lovely introduction. Thank you. That's very nice. Or Fahrusha. What do you prefer to be called?
I need to be called Fahrusha on this broadcast.
All
yes.
righty then. Miss Fahrusha. That's a lovely name.
Thank you. So maybe you want to tell us exactly how you got the name Scooter.
Well, my mother was Nancy, my aunt was Nancy, my cousin was Nancy. Actually, my cousin wasn't born yet. But the truth of the matter is Mother had a woman helping her with my sister, who was at the time almost 3 years old, and myself as an infant. And this woman called me her little Scooter cake. And a Scooter cake was presumably a sweet cake. It's just because, of course, I was such a sweet child. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think it's because I was scooting around from here to there and everywhere, high energy. But no, it was because I was a very sweet little baby, and that's how I got it, was Scooter cake. So that's how it came about, and it has always stuck. So Scooter has stuck with me all these 60-plus years now.
Well, I'm sure you were a sweet baby. And Scooter, we have here in the New York area, when I was a kid, we had Scooter pies. And they were like a chocolate with
a marshmallow interior.
Right,
yeah.
so that we had.
And I never liked those, actually.
Really?
And that was different. Mother thought maybe even, the woman had a black dialect, so the question was it Scooter, she was saying, or Scooter? Really Scooter? Which was Scudda. I've never thought to Google that. Maybe. Oh, I'm glad we had this little chat. I'll see what happens.
Wow. So, maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about how, Robert Monroe. Tell us. We've spoken about the Monroe Institute on Shattered Reality, but from your point of view, tell us who Robert Monroe was and how he changed your life.
Well, I was fortunate to have him in much of my life. I was about 14 years old. I actually met him when I was first 10. He was a friend of the family's. Then at age 14, he became like a mentor to me. And I knew he did these really weird things called going out of body. And since my mother was a Christian mystic of sorts, Mom had taught us for years about the odd things. For example, back in 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Mother told my sister Penny and me, if there, and we lived out in the desert, by the way. We grew up in the Marine Corps. It was 29 Palms, California. She said, if something lands from the sky, and it's a great big oval of some sort, and some strange-looking people get out of it and ask you to go with them, I want you to go with them.
Really?
So I grew up with this stuff. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Whoa.
Mom was looking for UFOs since I was a mere child, as they say.
Wow.
So here was Mr. Monroe, as we called him, and then again, good friend of the family's, and so we called him Uncle Bob. He didn't like that so much. He particularly hated Momo. You know, so, if you can imagine Bob Monroe being called Momo, no, he couldn't either. So anyway, so I call him Mr. Monroe up until the time he became my stepfather in 1971. And at that point, he became Dad. I still had my daddy, Bud Honeycutt, my father, and then Bob became Dad. Now, can you imagine my poor mother, Bud and Bob?
Oh, dear.
You know?
Well, I can think
Might
of
have
some
gotten a bit tense at times.
strange moments that could have occurred.
Indeed. But anyway, so Dad, Bob, was just a marvelously interesting, curious character. He turned me on to Duke Ellington and Amelia Earhart, got me reading biographies, got me interested in possibly flying someday beyond just out-of-body stuff, and also taught me about how sound can affect your state of consciousness. And so he played tapes for me. I had a tape recorder next to the bed where he played certain sounds to help me sleep better, because he was very interested in people learning to, or if they could enhance their learning by doing it during their sleep. And so I was listening to these sounds. Of course, now most people know that Bob is connected very much with HemiSync, the sound technology that he created. And so this was all going on. I'm 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And his teaching me also about, if any of you all have read his books, about the different overview.
Yes.
So not getting caught up in quote-unquote local traffic, for example. So he was like a Merlin in a way, teaching me how to look at life in a whole different way, teaching us about skills we had that everybody had. Probably, yes, we did go out of body, whether we remembered it or not, talking about psychic stuff. He was bringing interesting people into our home. And then later, when he and Mom were married, and we were at Whistlefield, and then he started Whistlefield Research Labs.
In Virginia, let me just add, from
California,
this is we're in Virginia now.
Right, we're now in Virginia. Actually, been in Virginia most of the time. It's only 3 years in California. But in Virginia, in the foothills of the Blue Ridge, in central Virginia, near Charlottesville, Virginia. And so there is where he started the Explorers. And the Explorers were people who would come in, and Bob would be testing out his sound formulas on these people to see how deeply he could get them into these expanded states of consciousness and yet keep them awake, so that they weren't just falling asleep, and then send them out and ask them to go find out, okay, so what is the nature of reality? Why is this like that? And so on and so forth. And so actually I think we have those on the website. You can go and look at the Explorers, and there are all these different sessions of his working with people and sending them out there. And Tom Campbell, whom you may be aware of, who did My Big Toe, right, NBC, was one of the early ones, he and Dennis Menerick. And Tom has since written a book about his theory of everything, which is the big toe. And, in fact, was just here last week giving his program, which was enormously successful.
Yeah, he's just a great guy. I mean, having read about him through the Monroe Institute, I don't remember exactly where, but I was very captivated to go and take a weekend with him when he was in New York City. And you couldn't meet a nicer person than Tom Campbell and his wife. Yeah, really nice folks.
He and Pamela, both very fine people. So anyway, so all these just fascinating things. And so here was Bob. And just in case those who don't know who he was, he wrote the book Journeys Out of the Body, which is the classic on out-of-body experiences. I don't even know, to be honest, how many languages it's in at this point. But it has been sold, it has been selling and selling and selling since 1971. and it's still very successful. He wrote 2 other books following that. But again, it was from his notes that he kept from these very weird experiences he was having outside of his body, or that was his perception that he was outside of his body. And so as a result of that, and as a result of things going on at Whistlefield, he was asked to give a program at Esalen, which I'm sure you're probably aware of Esalen out in California. Yeah. And so it was 1973, and he gave his first program. It was so successful, people asked if he would please do more. And so then in 1974, I was out of college, and I was answering Bob's fan mail from the book at that point. Yeah. I mean, basically, I started out, and he would look at them, and then after a bit, I got to understand that a lot of the questions, of course, were similar. And so I would answer, with his response, but I was the one taking care of it. And then from there, started giving training programs with him and Dennis and Tom. And then, I still can't believe I do that as I look at what we do here now. I was in my 20s, and I started flying around the country giving weekend programs to people and teaching them how to get into these different states of consciousness.
Similar to today's outreach programs?
That is correct.
Good.
That's right. So we started all these various programs. They were called the M5000 then, because Bob wanted to train 5,000 people. And out of that 5,000, he hoped to find some really gifted psychics and stuff. And as I like to tell people, well, if he just would have waited a while, I would marry one. But that he would work with us, for that matter. But then, so we did that, and he then bought the property, which I'm now speaking to you from, and built then what is now the Monroe Institute. So it went from Whistlefield Research Labs, and actually while we were still there, he turned that into the Monroe Institute of Applied Sciences. And then we moved here to this property in Nelson County, Virginia. It's still in the foothills of the Blue Ridge. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. Of course, Fahrusha, you know that.
I can attest to that, yes, indeed.
It is like
just a place that once you've been there, you always want to come back there. It is so comforting and pristinely beautiful. There are lots of words to describe it, and they're all good.
It's a Shangri-La kind of. It is gorgeous. So anyway, and of course what we do here, with now many more programs offered, and people come in and get into these different states of consciousness, again, using the sound technology, and it all starts with our gateway program, a gateway into these different states, and builds from there, and we have many different programs we offer now. But people feel like they find themselves. Well, and Fahrusha, you can speak to this. You know how profound the experiences can be. A lot of people's lives change.
They really are very profound, and because I work as a professional intuitive when I'm not broadcasting with the most lovely Kate Valentine, I find that once I come back from a program, I have enhanced abilities. It kind of gives you like an electric charge and a boost. It's a booster shot to your abilities. And I remember during my Lifeline program, I was with Natalie Sudman, who has also been on this show, and we went somewhere, and we went to the same place. Unbeknownst, she was my roommate, and we went together to the same place, and we didn't know we had gone to the same place and had much the same experience until we ended the meditation and went downstairs to talk about it.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
And we hear these kind of things a lot, as you might imagine, because people are dropping a lot of their focus on physical matter reality, frankly, so that they can go explore these other states within. And this is all about, we don't tell people what to think or believe here. That's what's so different, perhaps, from many other places. There's no dogma. With the exception of one thing, we do ask, of course, that people consider they are more than their physical bodies. And most people who are attracted to us would think that anyway.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know if that, I've been talking a lot. I don't know if that answers your question about Bob.
Yes.
But he was quite an amazing, brilliant character. Not easy to work for, but most brilliant people aren't,
Yes.
necessarily the easiest people to be with.
I've read all 3 of his books, and most unfortunately, I turned up there a few years after he passed on, so I never actually got to meet him. But the way that I got down there was rather interesting because I had gone up to the Omega Center for a program up there, and I walked into the Omega bookstore on my second to last night of being there, and I was looking for a gift for my daughter and some reading material, and I grabbed something for my daughter, who was a child at the time, and I just grabbed 2 books off the shelf without really looking at them. I looked at the covers, and I grabbed them because I had to go. And one of them was one of your husband's books, and the other was your stepfather's book.
You're kidding.
No, and this was totally out of the blue. And then when
Not out of the blue,
Yeah, it was a coincidence.
So it was a real synchronicity going on there. When I returned back to New York City, and most unfortunately my mother passed away, I was taken out to lunch by my friend, a girlfriend of mine, and went to the Barnes & Noble in New York City after she left after lunch. And I was going to buy one of those teacups for tea leaf reading that has, different funny signs on it and everything. It's specific for tea leaf reading. I was going to buy this because it was on sale. And I heard a distinct male voice in my ear that said, "Put that down. You don't need it now. Go to your friend Donald's bookstore. There's something special there for you."
Huh.
Oh.
And I'm standing in a bookstore in New York City with a lot of people around, and I'm like, what? And so I put it down. I thought to myself, what's the worst thing that could happen out of doing this? And I figured out that the worst thing that could happen is I got run over between the Barnes & Noble and my friend's bookstore, which is East Village Books. And so I walked the 3 or 4 blocks over to his bookstore, and my friend Jordan was there, and I walked in, and I went to the mystical section of the bookstore, and I'm looking around, and I saw Seth Speaks and an astrological guide for the year before, and, I'm thinking to myself, I must just be nuts. I must really just be nuts. But as I am walking away to go out of the store thinking that I was crazy, the voice comes back and says, "You are lazy. Look up, look up."
Really?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if the words were you were
demanding.
Yeah, I don't know if the words were exactly "you were lazy," but what's wrong with you? Look up. You're not paying attention. So I went back, and this was a real voice. This wasn't a thought. This was a voice in my ear. So I'm getting pretty freaked out, and I look up and I see several packages of tape, cassette tapes, like they're in plastic cases, and it's way up on the top. And I've got to call Jordan. And Jordan, get over here, please. Take these cases down for me. Well, it was number 2 through 5 of the Gateway program.
Of the Gateway Experience.
Yes, yes. And since it was my friend's bookstore, I got a very good deal on it. And I proceeded to go home and listen, but I didn't have the first part, number 1. So I had to get in contact with the Monroe Institute and buy the first set of cassette tapes. And I was in business. Boy, was I a happy camper. And in a few months, I ended up coming down there, which was...
When was this?
January. When I came, it was the summer of 2002 that this stuff happened, and then I took my Gateway in January 2003.
Oh.
So it was quite an experience coming there, being guided in this fashion to come there, doubly guided from the Omega Institute with the books.
Right.
And then, of course, I had to read the other 2 books. Robert Monroe. You know, I got the middle book. Why the middle book? I forget. Is that Ultimate Journey, or is Ultimate Journey the last book? Whatever.
Far Journeys is the middle one, and then Ultimate Journey is the
Yes.
last one.
So it was Far Journeys that I had picked up
mm-hmm.
along with Joe's book there.
Did you ever hear that voice again?
I've heard a lot of voices. I don't. It was a kind of. I don't think it was Bob's voice, because I soon after heard Bob's voice and would have recognized Bob's voice. It was a male, American male speaking voice, a little bit higher pitched than Bob's, I would say. So Nancy, tell us about how you met your husband. And all of how that happened, and how you got right there at the nexus of all the interesting stuff going on.
Well, you know, like you guys, I'm sure, I don't believe anything ever happens by mistake. I don't believe in coincidence. I think everything is right on schedule. And so when I was asked to come back in 1983 to be the director, I was, 31 at the time? And someone said to me, but how will you ever find a husband? You're out here in the middle of nowhere, because as you have seen, we are out in the mountains. It is very rural here. And I said, well, don't worry about it. I will magnetize him. And so what I did was I wrote down on a piece of paper, and this is what I tell all my clients, my astrological clients, and, well, actually anybody for that matter, is if you want to materialize something, you want to manifest something, you put it at the top of the paper, and you need to get it out of your head, so write it down with your hand, not necessarily typing it on the computer. If this is the best for me and those around me, or those whose lives I touch, I desire the following. And so I wrote down all the attributes I wanted in my life mate. And then I folded up the piece of paper and put it away. 3 weeks later, I was training one of our gateway programs, because Bob thought, oh, you can train and be a director too. Well, he didn't have any trainers left, so I was both trying to be a director and trainer. So I was training a program, and guess who was in it? Joe McMoneagle. Now, I had no idea about his very incredible skills as a psychic. But that was okay, didn't matter. And it's just kind of when I saw him, I knew, oh, my goodness, there he is. So that's how I met Joe. And then he ended up working with Bob. Now, Joe at this time was in the Army, and he was remote viewer 001, but the Project Stargate, as it was called, was still secret, so nobody knew about it. And Skip Atwater, whom we called Fred Atwater at that time, had been Joe's training officer, and he was already here, because we had known Fred all the way back in the 70s at Whistlefield, because he was always coming and bringing papers to Bob and so forth and so on, trying to learn more about all this stuff for obvious reasons. And so then when Joe got here, the idea was, well, Bob, would you work with Joe to see if you can help him remote view better? Can you make him a better psychic, or teach him how to go out of body? And so, in fact, Bob and Joe worked together in the lab. Bob devised some specific sound tapes, some hemisync tapes, for Joe. Joe did indeed learn how to control his out of bodies better, and was able to cool down in terms of remote viewing, his getting quieting his mind time. The way he puts it is from like an hour to 5 minutes as a result of what he learned. And so at one point he said to Bob, I've been using the tape so much, it's wearing through. What do I do? And Bob pitched the tape in the trash can and said, you don't need it anymore. Just remember how it feels. And, of course, that's what we tell our students here, program participants. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything except remember what it felt like, and you can recreate the experience of being at such and such a level. So that's how I met Joe. And so it was right here. And we will have been married in November 31 years.
Oh, lovely. A happy anniversary. And I do have to make a comment here, but with my clients, I do nearly the same thing. You know, sometimes people come, they're looking for a partner, and I tell them to write down everything they want in a partner and everything that they don't want in a partner. And then make sure everything they do want in a partner is all positive, and that everything on each list balances, so that there's a... And then I tell them to take the don't want list and burn it up.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then to focus like once a week on the do want list, take it out right before you go to bed, and visualize. And we've had some success with that, I'd have to say. We've seen people find their mates in that way.
Yeah, and I just find it so important, though, to make sure, the old expression, be careful of what you want, you just might get it.
Yes.
So that's why at the top of the paper, I always say, if this is the best for me. Because, you'll find some people say, oh, I want a guy who's good looking and he drives a Ferrari and he has lots of money.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
We've got plenty of
so
those.
So then you get one of those,
Really?
and then the person's maybe a ne'er-do-well. You never know, so... Yeah. Is that the best person for her? Well, maybe. Who knows?
Well, I'm going to add that to my...
you have to put it on if.
But the Ferrari?
No, Ferrari. I'm going to add the part about if the best.
Yeah, this is the best for me, yeah. And,
the highest
and those whose lives I touch, because it's got to be... Sometimes we don't know what our highest good is. Isn't that right? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you also have had, I don't know how active you are with this right now, but you have had an astrological service which has been worldwide.
Did you get into that at the same time as the Monroe Institute? That would be before.
No,
that would be way before, right?
Well, what happened was my mother took me for my first reading when I was like 9 years
Your mom
old.
sounds like a fascinating person, I'll tell you.
Oh, my mother was such an incredible soul. She was a true Virginia lady. I don't know. For some reason, my sisters and I didn't get those genes exactly. That very gracious Southern lady who's always polite and sweet. Well, but anyway.
I think you're pretty polite and sweet.
And
Thank you.
She probably makes a mean chicken salad, too. So.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Then there's the funeral salad, The funeral salad is what you take when somebody dies. I think that's the thing with mandarin oranges, sour cream, and, that whole thing. But anyway, so Mom took me to an astrologer when we lived in Richmond, Virginia, and his name was Ernest Longest. And Uncle Ernie, we called him, he was a great astrologer. And he read my chart, and from that moment on, I was hooked. So what in the world is that about? I'm 9? So anyway, I started buying the horoscope magazines and everything, and all I could read was the part that, didn't understand all the astrological stuff, but I would sure read the prediction part.
Right.
So it's been my passion for over 50 years.
Yeah.
And so then I've been practicing it for a long time. I do still do people's charts. I am a Western astrologer, tropical astrologer, but I do them on Saturdays because I'm a little engaged here at the Institute the rest of the week. Indeed. And, this is cute, too. Bob Monroe was not big on astrology, and so I was a closet astrologer in the old days. And now it's kind of like, he says, well, maybe if you put biofeedback with it. He was a very engineer mind type of thing, and he just didn't buy into astrology. Oddly, out of bodies were okay, but astrology was just a little bit too strange. So I always thought that a bit odd. But anyway, so yeah, I am still practicing. I'm not back in the closet with it as I used to be, and I do it on Saturdays. So that's how that works.
But it seems like it's all the same thing, like, the power suggestion, the ability to call out certain traits in people, and their ability to think, astrology certainly would be considering not like a normal, everybody does it a little bit, everybody knows everybody's sign. But,
or they read it in the newspaper at least just for fun,
exactly.
right?
But Fahrusha was saying to me that you used to write for Sidney Omar. And that was like my big January thing. I used to buy it and see
the Sidney Omar,
see how the year was going to go. And I sort of gave up on it because old Sidney wasn't too happy for me.
That's everybody. I mean, my mother used to cut out my every birthday. My mother would cut out my
from
forecast,
the newspaper, right?
and put it inside my card.
Oh, really?
Yes,
how nice.
she did. Just interestingly, a conversation on the TMI Explorers list, which is an internet list for people who've gone to more than one program at the Monroe Institute. That's the easiest way I can put it. There was a discussion about skewing the results of experiments because of the opinions of the experimenters, and even if the experimenters followed good scientific strategies and protocols, their opinions would skew the results. And this was going back and forth, and we all know like Russell Targ and Dean Radin have written about this.
But expectation thing, right.
One of the contributors, one of the very nicest contributors to the TMI Explorers list, and I probably shouldn't mention his name, so I won't, mentioned that the person's astrological sign changed the results by statistically important but not overwhelming amounts, like 1 to 3%. And I thought, wow, that is really mind-bending.
Say that again. The person's astrological sign did what?
In other words, you're an experimenter, like Ross Dunseith or somebody like that. And suppose Ross is a Virgo. The fact that he's a Virgo is going to skew the results in one direction or another.
Well, maybe they're just more into.
I don't mean that like Ross is really a Virgo,
Okay. It's all right, Ross. We won't.
I have never heard that.
I hadn't heard it either until they mentioned it.
But that's like Schrodinger's cat. Is it alive? Is it dead? But I'll tell you a personal experience I had, which was really interesting. I was working in a lab, and I was working with euglena, which are an odd sort of one-celled animal that has, let me just say, an organ in the cell that's a chloroplast. They can use it as a plant. It also has an organ that's vestigial that they can use to eat with, but they never do. And so my idea was I'll shine a little piece of light through this tube and see if I can train a one-celled animal to respond to it. Okay, so that was it.
Cool.
Okay, but then Easter vacation came, the refrigerator in the lab went down. So they had no exposure to light, they had nothing. And by the time I got back, they were all using the animal organ to eat each other.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So I just said, it must have been a mistake, and threw it out. And the guy I was working for said, You see how experiments get skewed? You shouldn't have thought that was a mistake. You should have thought that was a clue. And continued and followed through on it. But because at the time I was young and really stupid and really wasn't that interested in euglena, I just threw it out. But the lesson I learned from that was, you really have to think about things, Which, but so that obviously that little experiment of mine was totally skewed by the way I was thinking.
Well, and they have shown it's like. What is it? The expectation.
Yeah.
If you expect an experiment or whatever to fail or to be successful, you've got 90% of that going for you right there, or against you, depending on your belief.
Oh,
right.
I can make a graph like you would. I can make it jump up.
Well,
right.
The power of positive thinking does have a definite
Absolutely.
effect, and you have to think for a good outcome or the highest possible good, when sending healing intentions or anything of that nature.
Well, even in sports, the home field advantage is a real thing.
Oh, yes.
It definitely is a real thing.
Or teacher's expectation. Aware of the test they did where they told the teacher, now this class is a super special. They're really brainiacs. And, of course, they were normal range of kids. And sure enough, they did better on testing than the other kids.
That's really fascinating. And so that's really the whole point of the Monroe Institute, right? To sort of bring out this ability of people to not control their life, but to sort of bring out better things in their life.
Well, and to be aware. What we're talking about here is being conscious, and also again going back to. Bob felt it was really important we get a different overview. Watch out for your belief systems. He was real big on know, K-N-O-W, versus belief systems. And so go experience for yourself, which is why he didn't want to tell anyone here's how it is. Now, he shared his experiences, absolutely, and he has his own whole cosmology of what he, going out there to the I there and the ish, which is the inner self helper. Bob really did love acronyms.
Oh, yes, he did.
He was crazy with acronyms, but his whole thing was go find out for yourself. And what we do is we provide a methodology for people to go there, to get there, to focus consciousness. Because, again, if focused consciousness can solve all the problems, can answer all the questions that we have, and that's what he believed, then let's learn how to do it.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we teach. Now, you go and find your own answers, which is why it's fun. We can have a fundamentalist Baptist, which, by the way, we actually have had here, along with an atheist and a Catholic and an engineer and a housewife and a teacher and a
Buddhist.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter. That's the beauty of this particular thing that Bob put together, his Gateway program and the others while he was here. So, and I'm real proud to be part of that, because that means whatever your belief, your tendency, your whatever it is you need to honor, you can do so. Now, by the way, P.S., it might get blown apart by what you experience because you're going beyond typical belief systems. What he would call, we have a lot of cherished illusions.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's awfully hard to part with them,
Yes.
A lot of our listeners tend to be people who are interested in ufology because of Kate's previous show, and a number of the guests that we've had. Kate's previous show was the Kate Valentine UFO show. And so we do have quite a few people who are interested in ufology. And as a result of that, I have to bring in here like a correlation, is that what ufology is often in a big mess because people choose to have a belief system about the presence, whatever whoever the others
or
are,
their origin or whatever.
Exactly. Are they green men from Zeta Reticuli, or are they from our subconscious, or are they reptilians from Alpha Centauri?
Interdimensional.
But as soon as we introduce a belief system, we lose the experience.
Or as he said, the overview.
The overview, exactly. So this is, for those people in our audience who are interested in ufology, this is an interesting thread to look at. Because I dislike the word believe. I prefer to say think or, glimpse something here. But believe is always a loaded word in parapsychology and ufology, I would have to say. And by the by, perhaps we should mention at this point, because we have a lot of listeners who are interested in remote viewing and in UFOs. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the remote viewing training that is done by the illustrious Joe McMoneagle at the Monroe Institute, as well as the Star Alliance program, which I am dying to take.
Are you set up to take it yet?
No.
I
want to.
But just quickly before we get into that, because that is interesting, one of the remote viewers has made an excellent point, is that, for example, you can teach people art or music, but some people have a really innate ability that's enhanced by these programs, whereas the most of us can sort of hammer out chopsticks on the piano, and that's as far as it goes. So I guess that even though your program is excellent, from what Fahrusha said, not everybody can be a Joe McMoneagle.
Well, not everybody's going to be a Joe, but the truth of the matter is, if they come here, they will learn how to remote view so they can play chopsticks.
Okay.
They can, at least. They know it's a piano. They know it's got 88 keys.
All right, that's cool.
And not only that, they can play it with both hands and maybe use 2 octaves.
People surprise themselves, don't they, Scooter?
They do what?
They surprise themselves at how good
they can be.
It's really
true. And a lot of what Joe first you have to unlearn a lot of stuff. When the people try to, and we all try to do this, I think, particularly anyone who has any kind of who's tuned in to psychic stuff, you have to be careful, and you know this, Fahrusha, I'm sure, because of what you do. You can't automatically assume because it's round and there's water there that it's a swimming pool. What you can say is, it's round and it has water in it. And that's one of the things he teaches people is be careful, because you've got to allow all the pieces, let the pieces come in. Don't assume immediately. Don't try to jump to defining it. And so what he teaches people how to do is to perceive the overall gestalt, first off. And then he goes through and he teaches the difference, how to be a remote viewer. He teaches the person also how to appropriately judge a remote viewing. They do a ton of them in the course. And as a result, again, you're talking about understanding much more clearly who you are, what you came here to do. You get much better problem-solving skills because you're able to open up to getting more information about stuff. As with any kind of psychic stuff, whether it's past, present, future, doesn't matter. Again, you're learning to focus your mind to perceive that which is beyond our typical physical matter reality, or as Bob called it, PMR. So we have to avoid something, right? But, yes, I would say when I listen to people, and I don't think it's just because I'm his wife, I hear people, if anything, I would hear their complaints since I'm sitting in this chair, but they say, this is tremendous. I now know I can remote view. It's like learning to play the piano, even though you may not be Van Cliburn.
Yeah.
You say you may not be, or playing golf, and you may not be Tiger Woods. But, now I know how to hold the club. I know how to hit the ball. So the teaching here is quite good, and you do have one of the best, of course, with Joe. And it's funny for me to talk about it because I feel like I'm bragging on my husband, which I am. Yeah. But it's
right.
well earned.
You're allowed.
Yeah,
right?
you can speak the truth.
It's well earned. Okay, so these are very, very popular programs. His are, and so in fact he has one coming up this fall, I think, at some point.
Well,
it's
highly
October.
Recommended. Highly recommended.
Yeah. So you took it, huh?
Well, I took the class with Skip Atwater, which was wonderful, and Joe was a guest 3 times during, and he gave the first target. He came one night and spoke to us, and then he gave the last target. And the last target that he gave was a good hit for me, and I'm happy about that.
Yay, of course, yeah. Well, and Joe's program's quite a bit different from Skip's. So if ever you get a hit to do it again,
I would love to.
It.
And I'm sure that, given the time, I definitely will. I will definitely be there for
I know
Joe's
you're a
class
busy
as
lady.
well.
We need to bring some stuff to New York, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be great. That would be a great idea. I mean, we have the wonderful Allison Moore in New York doing the I'm trying to think of the correct word, the correct acronym.
Clear your mind.
Yes, clear my mind. She's the point person in Manhattan for Monroe graduates.
Oh, great. Okay, so she's probably doing excursion weekends or having just get-togethers, like a local chapter network.
Once a month, get-togethers.
Oh, bless her heart. That's great.
Network,
I was wondering if maybe it probably even works better if you're in a sort of a remote area, a rural area, but if you were in Manhattan with 8 million other people who are thinking intensely at any given time. Seriously, I'm not joking. About like where I'm going. Am I missing the subway?
Like
I'm
the noisy.
Yeah.
Well,
I wonder if that interferes.
I will tell you from my direct experience that when you are focusing in this manner, you do hear voices. And I've had the room that's one of the first rooms as you come in the door to the left. Off the library there, and in that room at TMI, and I've had the experience of meditating and a guided meditation and hearing voices of women, and I always just assumed it was the ladies in the kitchen, but I have been told that it is not the ladies in the kitchen. And so there are voices going on. As far as in Manhattan, when I meditate in Manhattan, if there's no background noise, I know something big is going to happen. Because when the noise stops, it means something big is going to happen.
You always said that.
I may not know what it is, but I know that the air is disturbed, and all the voices have stopped. They are hushed, and that means something is going on.
Interesting. First, have you ever found that by watching the news stories about what's going on with wild animals, let's say in humans, like all the shark attacks, have you seen those that happened a couple of months ago?
Yes.
In the coast, the whole East Coast, basically, unusual in shallow water and so forth. And then recently, a ton of bear attacks.
Yes.
Well, Joe and I noticed, and we're talking with another friend once, it was right after 9/11. Right before that happened, and we were remarking on this after the awful event, right before 9/11, there was a spate of shark attacks.
Ooh.
Again, a very unusual one. So when we were watching these shark attacks, we thought, ooh, I wonder if, and so far, knock on wood, I mean, other than this awful stuff with ISIS and so forth, but certainly nothing here on our land. And then, meaning USA, and then now recently all these bear attacks. And so I'm wondering, Fahrusha or you, Kate, if either one of you have ever noticed that there seems to be a correlation between unusual activity with other animals and humans to events as they come up, like your silence that you get, Fahrusha, before something happens.
I've got to say I have not noticed that because I was not aware of that. I do think that nature is pretty angry at us right now, though, for all the things that are going on. So I have not noticed the correlation of the shark attacks, but before 9/11 happened, 2 nights before, I was in my loft bed, and I was in a liminal state, and there was a helicopter going over my house, my apartment in Manhattan, which was not a tremendously unusual experience in the East Village. You know, sometimes things go on and the police helicopters go over. But for some reason, this absolutely terrified me, and I started screaming that somebody was going to get us. And so that was my little introduction. And that was the Sunday night before the Tuesday event. Wow. And on the Monday, I had a foot doctor appointment. And as I was leaving the foot doctor, I looked around, and everything was silent. It was a perfectly beautiful day, Monday, September 10th, 2001, but it was too quiet. It was just much too quiet. And it was eerie. It was like struck me to the core that it was very eerie. But if you would have asked me what was going to happen, I might have said, I think there's going to be a plane crash. And it would have been that. I wouldn't have been able to tell you exactly what was going to happen.
Sure.
So, but you know what I was thinking of this morning, and this is really off the subject a little bit, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. It was something that somebody, I'm sure you know, John Alexander, posted on his Facebook page, and it had to do with it being the 60th maybe or more, must have been 70th anniversary of Hiroshima.
Right.
And I began to think, I wrote this back to him, and I said, I would really love to see if a group of really good remote viewers, I'd like to, just participate, not being great as Joe, but just to participate in this, to see if there's some form of a karmic reality for the country of Japan, because today they also restarted the Sendai nuclear reactors that Fukushima is a part of.
Oh, great.
Really?
And it's
great.
Like, hello, what kind of stubborn...
They did that today?
Yes. What kind of stubborn stupidity is this exactly?
These are the people that kill whales.
It's just going to be a couple of days or months go by, and there will be another earthquake there, no doubt. I mean, you don't have to be a psychic to tell that.
Sure.
And, what exactly is the karmic load here with
you think
radioactivity and everything?
Back, like you killed us and now we'll kill you?
No, I don't think it's that direct.
Peacefully?
I don't think it's that direct.
Maybe in the back of their mind. Indirect.
Well, they're going to kill themselves too, I would suspect.
Yeah, well, sometimes people do that out of revenge. As long as you're dead, they'll go too. They don't care.
I wouldn't.
Well, obviously, you're not Irish,
I wouldn't exactly go there. But I wonder if there's some, like, I just want to meditate on that. What is the karmic
it's a thought,
connection?
really. It really is, because it's drifting over toward the West Coast.
It's
I mean,
doing a
all that
number
crap.
on Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's really doing a number on the whales are washing up dead. The giant those big huge squids and those other fish. I don't know, they're pole fish or something of that nature. But I would love to do. I'd love to do a meditation, like a group meditation on that. But
just quick back to the animals.
Yes.
Have you seen this recent show Zoo on TV?
I won't watch it. I can't watch it. I'm a wuss.
It's not that scary, but it's interesting how he feels.
Well, it's not the scary. It's the fact that it involves animals. Anything with animals, I get too sensitive about. So
we're all
the
animal
animals,
lovers here. We all own animals or caregivers of animals.
Yes.
We don't even own our
Right.
cats and dogs.
Right.
But the three of us here.
No, they own us. So I left for work this morning. There's 7 of them were sprawled out on the couch going, have a nice day there, sucker. But the animals win in this. They're all ticked off, and they said that humans have abused them, and now they're going to get back at humans. And so they gang up on humans, and quite effectively, I must say.
Good.
Yeah.
I second that emotion.
I get upset at our talk about being unconscious or our unconsciousness around animals. It really upsets me. So.
Yes, and now there is a wonderful new series of studies about how trees are also, vegetation, particularly trees, are also sentient in their own way.
Oh, yeah.
And that is really a wonderful, because it's a scientific study. Now, you and I, Scooter, and you as well, Kate, we may have always felt that way, but it's nice to have a little bit of scientific backup.
Well, not only scientific, but I think the general populace feels like this, because just yesterday in New Jersey, of all places, the 175-year-old oak that was destined to be cut down, enough people showed up and said, "Don't you dare!" And they didn't. Beautiful old tree.
Why in the world would they want to cut it down?
I make up a parking lot.
Oh my Lord! Oh, good heavens!
So anyway, but I think you people, and because I am not really a remote viewer or anything, so I'm sorry, I have to distance myself a bit. But I think you're bringing about a change in consciousness. I really do, and I think it's for the better.
Well, I think you guys are wonderful. Just doing this radio show helps in that. You're taking the time to focus on subjects that make people open up to other possibilities. So bless you guys for what your part in this.
Well, you never know who it reaches. Sometimes, as you said, there's no coincidence, and maybe somewhere just they happen to pick it up on a podcast somewhere, and they think, "Oh, you know what? That sounds interesting. Maybe I'll go down there and see what it's about." And then, bam, you have your next Joe. Go ahead. What's the last name?
McMoneagle.
I've interviewed how many people? 100, 200, 3. I don't know how many people. I have such a mind block against it. McMoneagle.
McMoneagle.
Because you want to put a G there. Don't put the G there. That's you're not alone. A lot of people do that.
She's thinking
McMoneagle.
Of the great
did you ever take
McGonagall.
French?
No.
Eagle, McMoneagle.
Okay.
Think of it that way. So it's McMoneagle, right? Just
okay.
drop one of the G's.
It's nothing personal. I apologize, but
no problem.
But maybe that's the next guy. Maybe it's just, as you said, some 9-year-old kid going to the astrologer and being said, "Wow, these things actually exist. That's great. Maybe I'll look into it. And maybe they'll be our little saving grace someday."
So tell us a little bit about the programs beyond the gateway.
Well, it depends on what people are interested. A lot of people want to get more in touch with their guidance, let's say. And so we have a program called Guidelines. And this is where you get in touch with, however you want to call it, your guides, your inner self helpers, your angels, by whatever term. And so it's a program that helps people give you the skill for getting into the states to get in touch with these other forms of informants, if you will. Informants, that's what I'll call mine. The Heartline program is another one that is very, very popular, and that has to do with learning to love yourself, self-trust, and so forth, as well as then being able to love more people without the fear, because there's so much fear we run into, as you know. And so the Heartline program is very big. The Lifeline program, you took that one.
Yes, I took guidelines and, of course, Gateway guidelines and Lifeline and a number of others, yeah.
Right, and so this is for people who might be interested in being of service to others. There are some that perhaps die and don't know they're dead, or they get stuck in a certain state. And in Lifeline, people learn how to get into different states and then help those people in transition who haven't been able to quite free themselves up, to help them move forward.
Earthbound souls. And
there you go.
Wow,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So that's really an interesting one. And then, of course, some people end up seeing people there who perhaps have passed on. I must add, though, immediately, you don't have to do that in Lifelines. We have a lot of people in Gateway who end up connecting with someone who's passed on. So, again, since we are talking about getting beyond physical matter, reality, no telling who you might run into type of thing. So that's in any of the programs. MC Squared, this is a program that Joe Gallenberger's psychologist has put together.
I took that one.
Trained. Yeah, and that's a fun one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You find that you do all sorts of things you never thought was possible, like bending forks and spoons into weird curlicues and starting seeds in your hand keep rolling sevens on the dice and that sort of thing.
Okay,
yes.
Now that's good.
That you want to do.
Yeah, that's good. I like that part.
That's influencing physical matter again.
Mind over matter.
Non-physical means. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
And so, and you mentioned star lines before. And now we're talking about going into other energy systems far beyond the Earth life kind of, or Earth human type of thing as we know it. And so Francine King, one of our senior trainers who's been here for a long time, actually designed this one. And this takes you out into quite what we call other focus states. Bob called the different states of consciousness simply by focus level, so that he wouldn't give them any kind of emotionally laden terms. So focus 10, for example, is mind awake, body asleep, and focus 12 is an expanded state of awareness, focus 15, state of no time, and so forth and so on. Well, in star lines, this is, and you have to have gone through a couple of programs in order to take this one, but this has to do with really exploring consciousness going way out there, and you actually are traveling through the solar system and looking at the consciousness of each planet. You were just talking about trees having consciousness or being sentient creatures, I want to say, beings, and it's so. Well, what about planets? You see, and we come back to that greater overview. And so what Francine built into this program a lot of, for example, going out into this area and experiencing the I there clusters. That's what Bob called them. Integrating parts of yourself. I mean, there are all kinds of things you do in this, and it's also bringing quite a bit of astronomy into this. She talks about being able to go through a particular portal. She calls it the Stargate of the Galactic Core. Now, I have to tell you, I've not taken the program yet. Yeah, and also going through, again, it's like going through the cosmos to help understand better your totality. So, and people love this. So it's one of the 5-day programs, 5 days, 6 nights, and then timeline. Of course, you want to go past, present, future. Look at other selves and other times and that kind of stuff. An out-of-body exploration program. Bill Buellman, if y'all have heard of William Buellman, actually trains that. That's one of our most popular programs here too. And then we have a program based on our spatial angle modulation audio technology. And the program is called Event Horizon, and this program was designed by Bob Holbrook, who we call our director of innovation. He's quite the idea person and a great trainer. And
he's a nice guy too, really nice.
Yeah,
man.
he's fun, and he put Event Horizon together. This program, along with his wife and Natalie Sudman, whom you mentioned before, and Miranda, who is his wife, and
yes.
they three of them trained this. And again, it's getting beyond our personal limitations. That's what we're calling the Event Horizon. And so, how can you best get to your path of freedom? What are the practices you can learn here? And so this is, again, creating your own destiny, your own future.
Well,
instead of just, accepting, here we are, back to belief systems, and, well, I'm going to do it this way because this has always been me, that kind of thing. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I, for one, can't wait to come back home to the Monroe Institute.
Well, we got to get Kate there. Kate, have you ever been here?
No.
Oh! All right, Fahrusha, you got a job.
I'm
you're
not
bring
a
her with
believer. I'm not a believer, but I'm open to change.
You have had so many unusual experiences.
I don't know. Well, all right, but those were not of the psychic.
But
sort of.
she is an experiencer par excellence, and I think she's afraid to admit it, Miss Kate Valentine.
Honest to God, I really. But what I was going to say, since that is an extraordinarily beautiful area of the country, when you go on these 5-day courses, do you stay there, or is there other
you
places?
stay here. Absolutely.
Nice.
We have a center.
And
actually, you'll love
Residential
this.
center.
You stay in a CHECK unit. The CHECK would stand for Controlled Holistic Environmental Chamber.
Oh, boy.
Yes,
really
Bob did
cool.
put that together. And if any of you have ever been to Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home here in Virginia, do you remember his bed and how it was kind of enclosed?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like a CHECK unit. And the idea was that you get to, again, you're kind of in the womb of security and blocking out the physical world, and that's where you listen to the exercises and have all these experiences, you see.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So you do that. You stay here, you eat here, and it's beautiful grounds to walk on in the midday breaks, and
and great company always.
And good company, and the staff is just the best staff you'd ever want to meet in your life. Everyone's friendly. And
yes, they are. They really, really are.
But do they have good coffee?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, you have to come to my office for that.
Okay. I'll be there.
Well, before we go, because we have been talking about an hour, and we hate to go, but we must ask you at least to give us one of your own paranormal, psychic, or mystical experiences, because that's what our listeners want to hear about too.
Okay, well, let's see. Do we want to talk about how I met my grandfather who died before I was born, or how I saw the stealth bomber before it became known about, or about the shared out-of-body I had with Bob and Nancy? I mean, what's your pleasure here?
I think your grandfather sounds good.
Wow.
Okay, well, one night, and again, a lot of my stuff happens in sleep because I have to admit my brain being going all the time. I'm a Virgo. I can't help it. Busy. Anyway, so I'm asleep, and I got to meet my grandfather. Now, I never got to meet him. He died actually like the week before I was born.
Oh.
And when I got to meet him, I was 16 years old, and it was this lovely connection, and I knew that that's who it was. And there wasn't any talking, really. It was just this loving presence between us.
Lovely.
The next morning, I did not say anything to my mom. I don't know, maybe I was late running for school or whatever it was. But all through the day, I had my grandfather with me. It was really cool. I got home, and Mom said to me, the strangest thing happened. Your grandfather has been on my mind all day today.
Wow.
And he used to call me Ningti. Now, Ningti, her name was Nancy, and that name kept coming to me. And then I got a call from your Uncle Biff. Well, that was her brother. And he called her and said, Dad has been around me all day today.
Wow.
Now, I just find that kind of interesting. That was just one of those cute little synchronicities, if you will. But I was certain I had met him. Now, why and how did that happen?
That's a very, very poignant experience.
It was lovely.
Heartfelt, yes.
Especially since I never got to meet him in person. At least I got to meet him, through this being in this other state. Thanks to Mr. Monroe again, because I was listening to these, basically they were hemisync before we called them hemisync sounds at night, and going into these other states of consciousness. So I was being provided with all manner of experiences, as I say, to include shared out of bodies with Bob and Mother, and well, I make that plural. It was actually one big one. It was really fun. So, yeah, I am so fortunate and so very grateful for being brought up with my mother and my father. Daddy was a good Methodist Christian, and then Mr. Monroe, who wasn't. Very much everything but, he was not a religious man. He never wanted to be a guru, but my gosh, did he open up the world.
Yes,
and then, of
he
course,
has.
with Joe. So I feel very lucky. And so a lot of such experiences, and I think everybody can have them.
I agree.
We can all have them. We just have to pay attention. Here we go again. Be conscious.
And we have to know your address and how to get in
Well,
touch.
yes, we want you to put out how people can come to the Monroe Institute, how they
I
can.
guess just online.
Oh, that'd be fine. Yeah, you can just go to monroeinstitute.org.
Okay.
Or those people who prefer to use the telephone, our address and everything is on there, but it's 434-361-1500 is the phone number. But monroeinstitute.org, and you can go there and learn about all the programs and everything else and contact us and join in on the fun, because it is fun.
Yes,
and that's
it
something
is.
Bob was big on too. It's serious, yes, but for heaven's sakes, make it fun.
Okay.
And so, Kate, you have an open invitation.
Okay. All
You
right.
sure do.
Okay.
Come see us.
And I hope to see you soon in person. Myself,
I
I
hope
hope
so.
to be down there very soon. And thank you so much for
this
being
was
such
great.
a wonderful guest.
Yeah, it was wonderful to speak with you. I really feel
But
as if I've known
likewise,
you.
thank you all so much for having me on the show. Kate, we'll expect to see you in Fahrusha. I need to give you another hug, so come on back.
Okay, you got it.
Okay, you all. Thank you again.
Okay, Scooter, have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So,
So great. That was
we've had
terrific.
a lovely visit with Nancy Scooter McMoneagle, the executive director and president of the Monroe Institute, which is in Faber, Virginia, just outside of Charlottesville. And do you have any news for us, Kate?
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
Well, we're hoping to start in September with a full schedule, twice a month, and we will let you know who our upcoming guests are, or what they are if they're not human.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun, right?
Yeah, just the voice coming in, that'd
Just
be
a
cool.
little.
You'd see Bill checking his equipment.
Yes, just a little EVP. Electronic voice phenomena, would you say? So,
But we'll leave it here in his domain, and we'll leave.
We'll leave
yeah.
it here.
Yeah.
He can have fun with it in the late night and in the wee morning hours. 4 a.m. is a very good time for that sort of thing. And Bill says thanks. And what we really want to say is a big thanks to Mr. Bill Morades, who is our faithful and talented engineer, and who is now going to say goodbye.
Okay. Bill? No.
Goodbye.
Okay, thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye.